trying to give him room. Like, that's where you need those sticks.
Yeah.
Dinner better in the room.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, it's 9 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get the meeting started. Good morning, Director Wilcox, Director Peters, staff and members of the public. This is the engineering committee. First thing we'll do is public comment for items that are not on the agenda. If you would like to comment during this time, you can press. Oops.
Nick. Oh, Nick's been muted.
Hold on. You're muted, Nick.
He's trying to. Are you unmuting yourself, or would you like me to do that for you?
Technical difficulties.
He's clicking it. So I can't.
Nick, you have to unmute yourself, sir. Should be in the bottom left corner.
Or you can allow me. I'll try. It won't let me.
Yeah, you can't unmute him if you didn't mute him.
You learned a lot on this Zoom.
Can't tell you how many Zoom meetings I've been in.
He was unmuted. He's trying.
Yeah, he was working a minute ago. You just gotta find it.
So if you hover on your screen there, should be a bar with an audio. You probably have a red line through it. You need to unmute. He's giving assistance.
Please bear with us for just 1 minute here.
So that's why I say, he left the meeting for a moment.
Right.
Nope. Getting IT support.
You can't unmute him from your side, Chris?
Yeah, I've been trying.
No, if he's, you can try there. If he's muted himself, we can't unmute him.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
You got it.
You're in it.
We can hear you.
We think.
Nick,
Say something, Nick.
Nick, say hello.
Hey, how are you guys doing?
Yeah, we got you. Okay.
Hey,
We're good. Thanks for the IT support there.
Amanda, thank you.
It's even better.
See, now the stuff's on the bottom.
Okay. She's just touching things randomly until something happens.
We'll accept her bill at a later date.
Yeah. Okay, so now we'll move forward with the committee.
We have public comment. Is there anybody,
Yeah.
any public comment?
So public comment on items not on the agenda, and that would be, you can press *9 to be able to have your hand raised.
You want me to start here?
Yeah.
You want to say his name?
Yeah. Jack Sanchez? Can you hear us?
I'm trying to unmute him. We're having issues with the mute and unmute.
Did he was on the...
There you go. Jack, yep.
Go below, he was on the phone, remember? Try unclicking that phone below.
Holding us
Oh, there we go.
process, much appreciated. I'm Jack Sanchez. I'm the president and founder of Save Auburn Ravine Salmon and Steelhead, and I have with me one of our board members, Robert Hain, who is the restoration coordinator of North Ravine, the largest tributary in Auburn Ravine, and he's here giving me moral support. And SARSIS has concerns about NID's directions to E-Corp for Hemphill and water transport.
No, wait.
So Jack, Jack, this is an itemized, agendized item, and so we'll have public comment for this particular project when we move forward to that item. So this is just for comments for, that's not related to anything on the agenda.
I'd like to give this now if possible. We have other meetings to be.
It's not possible. You need to wait,
That's not
Jack.
how it works. Yeah.
Okay,
It'll only take us a minute to get there, Jack.
Almost there.
oh, great. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah.
And then, Steve Hubbard.
Steve Hubbard, you have a comment?
You gotta
I'm trying to
slow
unmute
down
him.
there.
He has
Slow
to-
down there, Hondo.
he has to unmute himself.
Steve, you need to unmute yourself.
You wanna mute Jack?
There you go. Steve?
I'm a little issues today.
Steve?
Steve, can you? He didn't call in on that other number, did he? Okay.
Steve?
Okay, maybe he decided it's on, perhaps it's on.
Okay,
the
so
Hemphill.
his hand isn't raised anymore.
Uh-uh,
Okay.
All right.
Oh, now it is. Nope.
No,
Okay.
that's Jack.
that's Jeff.
Okay, so, seeing and hearing none, we'll move forward to item number 1, which is, approve the minutes of the meeting that was held on March 10th of 2020. Do the directors have any,
Additions,
comments?
deletions, or comments?
deletions? Okay, any public comment on this item? Okay, so we'll go ahead and close item number 1 and move on to item number 2. So item number 2 is the Hemphill Diversion Structure Project, which is CEQA Consulting Services contract. And what we're doing is we're asking the committee to make a recommendation to the board to award a consulting contract in E-Corp Consulting for the CEQA work for the Hemphill Diversion Structure Project in the amount of $299,493, and also approve a budget amendment of $100,000 and allow the general manager to execute these documents. And so with that, what I'm going to do is turn it over to Tanya Herrera, who is the project manager for this project, and she will go through that. Tanya?
Good morning, everybody. So yes, as Doug indicated, we're asking for an advance of a recommendation. The project, we had previously had a contract with Helix to do a CEQA analysis for the project, but the initial project has changed. So the district had some concerns about scope creep, potential change orders. So we felt that it was necessary to reissue an RFP for the analysis of actually a much broader scope. And the broader scope included an analysis of equal levels of certain alternatives, which was not captured in the original Helix contract. So with that, we sent a proposal out, or a request for proposals out to 8 potential consultants. We received 6. And with the 6, as you can see in the memo, the base costs with the original contract was not significantly less. So that reinforced our action for actually going out for a new contract. After analysis of all the proposals, E-Corp ended up being the proposal that was ranked the highest of the group. Therefore, we're requesting advance of E-Corp's contract to the full board.
So, Tanya, can you talk a little bit about some of the changes in the scope that put us into this position?
Yes. So
Wanting to go back out.
So the original contract was an evaluation of a preferred project, and at the time, the preferred project was indicated as the removal of the diversion structure and an infiltration gallery. Through development of the project description and the project goals, the district felt that it was necessary to look at alternatives at equal level. Because of that, we actually did reach out to Helix asking them for one of the potential alternatives if there would be any additional costs associated with evaluating that. They did indicate yes, and actually submitted a change order to us requesting additional costs because it was to address the expansion of the project description and the expansion of the evaluation footprint for that project description.
Which included an offsite, right? The raw water pipeline as an alternative.
Correct.
That was need to be considered, and within that there could be different alignments within that alternative as well.
Yes, so
Right.
overall, the overall scope of the RFP that differed from the original contract was that within the 3 potential alternatives that would be evaluated equal level, there could be variations of those. And such like Doug gave the example of project pipeline alignment, there could be various alignments within that would need to be analyzed.
And in addition to that, with regards to the timing, the requirement of the agreement that we have to have the draft environmental document, draft EIR out by April 1st of 2021. So we still had an opportunity to go out and solicit these RFPs and to get new proposals in and still be able to meet that timeline. So one of the requirements obviously within the RFP was that we would be able to meet that. And ECOR was, I think, even one of the better ones in terms of schedule, which have it at the end of February or the first part of March, being able to have that document available and on the street so that we make sure we meet that April 1st deadline requirement that we have.
Yes.
Any other comments, Tanya?
No, if the members have questions, I can certainly answer any questions, but I don't have any further comments.
Okay. Any comments or questions from the directors?
I
Laura?
have questions. Nick, did you have any questions?
I'll make a comment.
Okay. Go
Yeah.
ahead, 'cause I have a few questions.
I notice from the table, ECOR is certainly not the lowest bidder by a small amount. However, I would agree with staff's conclusion that ECOR is probably the best qualified to do this. We've had long experience with ECOR. We hired ECOR some number of years ago to do the study on the Bear River that we committed to as part of the water rights settlement talks that we had with Foothill Water Network et al. And they were chosen jointly by Foothill Water Network and NID to carry out that work. And I believe that they did an excellent job and provided good service to us. So I feel that ECOR is a very reputable and competent consultant and would do a good job for us on this.
Okay. Laura?
Okay, I have some questions. And starting back with a pretty fundamental question, on June 8th, 2016. So apparently Kleinschmidt did a study that was submitted on June 1st. It was the Hemphill Alternatives Analysis Study that the board, they brought it to the board. They said, here's a suite of things we could do to resolve Hemphill. And there was 7 alternatives, maybe 6, 7 alternatives. And they brought it to the board, they explained what was going on, and the board said, okay, do alternative 4 or alternative 5. And in that meeting, and it said for staff would evaluate the south side of the facility to ensure that it has the appropriate area to support an off-stream diversion facility, so the district could then pursue full or partial abandonment of the ravine. That was the direction from the board on June 8th, 2016. And one of the options on that analysis was option 6, which said Lincoln Canal Auburn Ravine Connection AR1. And they looked at it to provide the event removal of the diversion structure and use a pipeline from AR1 down and around. And it was determined that current data for the Lincoln Canal indicated it does not have sufficient capacity. Modifications to expand carrying capacity, construction of the pipeline, and the required permitting would greatly increase costs And there would be major factors in assessing viability. And so we chose not to pick alternative 6, the board. And so my first question is, I kept thinking, and then in your staff report today, you said, that's June 8th. Your staff report today, you said that that came out of the TAC meeting that said, I'm still on 2016, it says that the TAC decided that let's go with the pipeline. As the project moved forward with the TAC, the district objective was modified to limit activities within this section of the ravine. How was that modified? I mean, did it come back to it seems like the board had to approve looking at alternatives 4 and 5. Why wouldn't it have to come back to the board to approve going back to an alternative that was already deemed infeasible?
The alternative you're talking about, Laura, isn't the alternative that we're talking about today. The alternative that you're referring to was to use Lincoln Canal and then pipe from Lincoln Canal across to the Hemphill Canal. The project we're talking about is linking the AR1 to the Hemphill Canal. They're completely different.
But that's still a completely different alternative that did not come to the board for approval to investigate. It's a right turn, and it's way, way more expensive.
Right now, so the pipeline moves forward only because, and was brought to the TAC as an environmental alternative that we have to.
Who brought it to the TAC?
The chief engineer did.
So at the last one, or the one before, the last one, it might have been the last one, I presented some alternatives to the TAC, which looked at utilizing water from the Lincoln treatment plant, looking at running through the Lincoln Canal, looking at running this pipeline from the AR1. So that was discussed at that time at the TAC. There was some support that getting out of the ravine altogether in that area from some of the agencies, and so that's one of the reasons we went forward with this alternative. Ultimately, the CEQA document's going to identify what is the superior alternative environmentally. It is ultimately up to the board at that point to decide if that's the route that they would want to take, or if you want to take one that has potentially more impacts. I mean, that would be a board decision, but this is clearly an alternative, environmentally, I wouldn't say superior, but an environmentally alternative that needs to be discussed and reviewed when we look at these alternatives for Hemphill.
Why now?
Which is why it's included in that.
First time.
Because now we're at the beginning of the process. This is the time to investigate that alternative.
Well, the process
Why
started.
it was done at the beginning, back in 16, I do not know.
Yeah,
I
because
was not.
my big concern is it's going to be another 300,000. It's just a lot of money. We've spent $700,000, $800,000 on this already, and now we're going to start over again. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So that was my, so you're saying taking it out of the, it seems like to go from one canal to another through AR1 those are very similar projects to yours is very similar to option 6. It's putting it in a pipeline and getting the water out of the ravine. It's the very same concept.
But engineering wise, they're very different.
Right.
How so? One's across open land and one's in roads?
One is an easement on personal property, and it takes a lot of time and effort and much more environmental and easement work. And one is in the road, already has a PUE, and we can cut and cover all the way.
And so what do you think the environmental impacts are going to find out, taking 325 miners inches out of the reach of the canal from AR1 down to Hemphill? How do you think that's going to go over?
Well, that's part of what this document will do. It's going to address those issues based on these different things. I can't tell you what that result's going to be. That's why we're going to be hiring a consultant to do that. Just like the consultant
for the canal.
A ravine. I'm sorry, I meant to say the ravine.
325 inches in the ravine.
325 miners inches from AR1. We're going to pull it out at AR1, so it's not going to go that 6.5 miles or 6 miles.
Yeah, but the delivery at Hemphill is only 16.
CFS.
No, it's currently 12 CFS. It has a master plan of 16, so 12 CFS peaks number deletes about 400 and something miners inches. Yeah. And so that's part of what what this document's gonna have to do, in addition to the removal of the existing structure and how that's gonna be impacted in the sediments and all that, that's all gonna be part of what they have to look at when we look at these projects. And that part's gonna get done no matter what project we do, because even if we do a infiltration gallery, we're still gonna be removing the existing Hemphill. So some of that work is gonna get done regardless of the alternatives. So yes, part of what they would have to look at is impacts between the Auburn Ravine 1, which is the Gold Hill diversion, 6 miles, roughly 6 miles upstream, and the location that it's at now. That would be part of that.
Are we going to investigate, as one of the alternatives is just to put a fish ladder on it?
That's not the direction of the board, no.
It said full or partial. It doesn't say the board. I can't find where the board said no fish ladder. I looked and looked and looked.
That was a closed session item, Director Peters?
In 2016?
Last year. You were present.
I think that, I don't know, these closed sessions.
So as part of the process of any environmental process, we'll be sending out the notices of the intent to do these work and to allow public comment to come in. So comments with regards to other alternatives will be identified during the public comment period, and we'll have to address those as part of the environmental document.
Yeah.
And so if an alternative comes in that says, why leave the facility in place and put a fish screen, that's something that we're gonna have to comment on, and the document's gonna have to deal with as part of that process. Yeah.
And if we look at it from the beginning as one of the alternatives, we wouldn't have to start all over again after we say, oh, here we've hit another dead end and we spent another $300,000 and why don't we just look, so I'm sorry, what are the alternatives you are proposing for this CEQA document?
Well, there's
Tanya's ready to go.
okay, go ahead, Tanya. Sorry.
That's okay. It's a little hard when you're not in the same room, I know. So there's, with all the alternatives, except for the no alternative, we're looking at removal of the diversion structure. And then we're looking at construction of an infiltration gallery, either on one side of the bank or the other. We're looking at a pipeline alignment from AR1, and there's various routes taken for that. And then we're looking at the abandonment of Hemphill Canal and discontinuation of service.
Discontinuation of service to the Hemphill Canal?
Correct.
That is an alternative that needs to be considered. Whether the board chooses to go with that alternative or not is a different question. But the document will discuss the no project alternative. It'll discuss, right. It'll also discuss some of these other items like coming from the Lincoln Canal, looking at treated water from the wastewater treatment plant in Lincoln. Those items will be in the alternatives analysis. But some of those may fall out relatively quickly.
Right.
Meaning there's only 2 or 3 that are in need of more detailed investigation as part of the document.
Mm-hmm. I just think we should, go ahead, Nick.
I just think it makes sense in terms of the CEQA analysis to have the full range of alternatives there. And this is certainly a possibility. It may fall out in the CEQA process, and it needs to be fully analyzed at this time.
So how much of the helix are you just tossing that in the garbage can and starting over with ECOR, or are you going to be leveraging off of that, or how it seems like this?
The helix and the helix work that was done were with some field analysis, some desktop analysis. We do have that information that was delivered to us. The field analysis, one of the optional costs that was indicated by Helix was that field analysis around the Hemphill structure. That does have valuable information, but it is out of date and would need to be updated.
And so all that work that was done previous is available and to be used by ECOR, right? Which is why the numbers would suggest that it's a relatively same level of work. Helix has obviously done work previous to this as part of this project, but yet their costs are basically still the same. as ECOR, which means that same amount of effort still needs to be done at this point.
And Helix,
There's still value in the work
And
that's
there's-
done before.
And there's still value in the work that's been done before, absolutely. And we're continuing to do other studies. We got the sediment study in process right now, so things are continuing to move with regards to this.
we're terminating Helix's contract, is that correct?
Yes, because
Terminating their contract.
we're terminating their contract, correct, which we're not adverse to them working for us, which is why we included them in the ability to submit an RFP. If we had issues with them specifically about their work, then that would be a different discussion. It clearly wasn't. It was really about the potential for scope creep and the issues, and we want to be able to put a cap on this so that we can come forward and say, look, this is what it's going to cost to get us through this. And so that's why we sent this back out and allowed Helix to resubmit. We would have anticipated, or we had thought, that Helix would come in at a lower number, considerably lower number, and they did not, so.
And because they just don't understand pipelines or something, or I don't understand why they couldn't have just done the work.
The level of effort, it just demonstrates that the scope has changed. We're asking for folks to look at the alternatives at the same level of detail. That was not what was originally proposed in the initial Helix contract. Preferred project was taken, and they were going to develop alternatives that would be environmentally superior to that preferred project. Those would not have been necessarily evaluated at the same level of detail.
Okay, then my next question is, so it says that page 1 says there's ongoing sediment transport work being done, and it says Holdridge and Cole completed, but Holdridge and Cole completed a sediment characterization study in 2017. What's different?
So Holdridge and Cole completed that characterization study, yes. And so the sediment transportation study actually looks at the ravine and the sediment movement within the ravine during certain storm events. And it looks at removing the diversion structure and what the channel will look like when that sediment moves along at it. So it's looking at it in more detail than Holdridge and Cole have performed with their HEC-RAS model.
Because I'm concerned, yeah. And so the CEQA document's going to look at taking all that water out of that 6 miles of ravine.
That will be one of the impacts it looks at, yes.
Yeah, and so you're saying that you don't have to bring it back to the board. It seems like this is a pretty big change in project without board approval. It says the TAC modified it, but if the TAC didn't modify it, do you have minutes? Doug, do you have your minutes of those TAC meetings? I haven't ever seen any of those minutes of those TAC meetings.
I would have to try to go back through and look. I don't know if Tanya, do you have some?
So my understanding of the TAC that there was not, from the initiation of the TAC, that there was not minutes proposed to be taken. The last, I think the last TAC meeting, they started taking, the last TAC or the last 2 TAC meetings, they started taking minutes.
They're not posted. They should be posted on the project. Anyway, so the TAC, so discussions at the TAC, I don't know why we don't take notes. This TAC is an advisory meeting, a committee, and we don't write down what they advise. And so it's all, well, they said this, well, I don't know. Did they really say that? I don't know. So that's one problem. But I just think that this is a significant enough change in direction on this project that it should have come to the board for, you know, we had to approve options 4 and 5, and this is completely different than either option 4 or 5. And when that was
Director
changed.
Wilcox? We're happy to bring it back to the board, Laura, if that's what you'd like. Director Wilcox, are you on, or would you like to bring it back to the board?
Lead up for the board's discussion tomorrow.
Well, it's only up for the board discussion to award the CEQA contract. If the committee isn't comfortable with recommending the award of the contract, and the committee wants to come back to the full board to have a discussion about what project components are going to be put into the CEQA document, then we would withdraw the item from tomorrow's board meeting and then come back at it at a later date, which is totally fine. Our problem's gonna be is that we're going to potentially violate the settlement agreement. We need to get the CEQA document up and running.
Well, we need to get it completed by date certain.
Right, so it would only impact that timeline. I mean, I can engage with Water Audit California to try to modify the settlement agreement if necessary. We can run it out and see what the CEQA document comes up with, and then have the conversation at the end of the CEQA document about which is the preferred project that the board wants to move forward with. Really, all we're doing is measuring out the environmental impacts of all of the alternatives, and we're asking the committee for its recommendation to bring the item before the board tomorrow.
Yeah, I guess my feeling is that a CEQA document should consider all of the alternatives. I don't agree with Director Peters at all on this issue. And the question before us is, who is it that's going to carry out the CEQA analysis, and a secondary question of what alternatives go into that. I think that the broad range of alternatives need to go into that, and that I am quite comfortable with ECOR doing the analysis, and presumably if there are impacts associated with taking the water out of the ravine, those would be analyzed in that document as part of that move.
Okay.
I guess I'm just most concerned is that we spend money just over and over and over. It's a lot of money that we've spent to get to the.
We spend money because people keep suing us, Laura.
Yeah. No, I'm all for, I just don't like the way the project was developed. That's my main concern, is that
The project was developed to try and reduce the impact at the Hemphill diversion and keep the water in the ravine. Basically, the directors, and myself included, wanted to keep that water in the ravine because water in the ravine has the potential to achieve multiple beneficial goals. It can serve an environmental purposes while in stream, and then you divert it out of stream and use it for consumptive uses. And so that was the direction from the board, was to try and maximize all the various benefits. The problem is that the situation's become so complicated that, you know, we need to look at other alternatives. You know, this reminds me of a situation in Butte County, and I'll just detail that for a bit. There's a project up on Butte Creek called the DeSabla project. PG&E diverts water out of the Feather River, transports it into Butte Creek, puts it through the DeSabla project, and then runs it downstream. That has created a salmon run over time. That project was up for FERC relicensing, and the environmental groups placed so many conditions on the DeSabla project, and the project was so old that it became no longer feasible for PG&E to operate that project. And so they wanted to close down that project. And now all of a sudden the environmental groups are going crazy because PG&E is taking water from Butte Creek. No, that water actually belongs in the Feather River. The water that's in Auburn Ravine actually belongs in the Yuba River. It's not really Auburn Ravine water that we're talking about. It's imported water that's there solely because of the way we've plumbed the system.
I concur. I agree with that.
Because what I said is absolutely true.
No, I don't doubt it. Absolutely don't doubt that. So I thank you for that. But I think that it's coming to the board tomorrow anyway. So we'll have that discussion at the board tomorrow.
And so that raises an interesting question. Are you harming the environment by taking water from a stream that doesn't belong there in the first place?
How long do you think water's been going down there? How long do you think, maybe Rim or Doug, how long has that water?
Over 100 years.
How long?
And the situation between Butte Creek and Auburn Ravine are somewhat analogous. because my guess is that under unimpaired conditions, there wasn't really much of a salmon run in Auburn Ravine, and that the fish that have found their way in there are opportunistic fish. And so are you harming the natural condition by removing the water? That's a philosophical question.
That's right.
Percentage of our water in the ravine is not significant. With regard to the item before the committee this morning, do we have a recommendation from the committee to award the contract to ECOR? Or are we split?
I would make such a recommendation.
Laura?
I'd rather wait till the board.
So I have a split decision?
Okay.
All right.
So we'll continue to take it to the board.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Public
Okay,
comment?
public comment. We'll start with
Jack,
first.
where you at,
Whose
Jack?
phone number this is.
No, Jack Sanchez is first.
Okay, where to go?
Up, there.
There.
Is this his hand up?
Well, he wanted to talk, so.
He may need
Any other?
help unmute
Jack?
on his side.
Jack, can you unmute on your end?
Oh, there we go.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear
Yes,
you.
sir.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Good.
Okay, I'm the president and founder of SARSIS, Save Auburn Ravine Salmon and Steelhead. And we've been working with NID since 2009 with various levels of success. And I have with me our North Ravine Restoration Coordinator, Robert Hain, who is restoring North Ravine, which is the main tributary of Auburn Ravine, and it is the part of the Auburn Ravine where landlocked steelhead, endangered steelhead, and Chinook salmon are housed. Listening to the discussion is just amazing. SARSIS has real concerns without your discussion, but with your convoluted discussions, we really have concerns about NID's directions to ECOR for Hemphill Dam and the water transport. SARSIS has many times told NID that we do not request any dams be removed from Auburn Ravine or any significant changes made. All we want is fish over the dams. 100 times we've said this. SARSIS has concerns which are about the amount of water taken from Gold Hill Dam, AR1 in NID speak, which is said to be 16 cubic feet per second to feed Turkey Creek Canal. And we are concerned about the added water that will be diverted for future customers in the same 2-foot pipe. We are also concerned with the negative effect on the groundwater recharge over the 6.5 river mile distance from Gold Hill Dam to Hemphill Dam, the water being in a pipe, eliminating the natural groundwater recharge. We recommend Hemphill not be removed and a fish ladder and rotary screen be installed downstream of Hemphill Dam, and something like the step-ups with rocks and concrete, like that which NID installed below the Lincoln Gauging Station fish ladder. SARSIS
So Jack,
requests a response in writing from us. SARSIS really wants a request in a response to what we're saying. Simple is always better, and Robert Hain has something to say. This is our board member in North Ravine Restoration.
So Jack,
Wait,
and Robert,
okay.
Robert, before you speak,
Wait.
I just want to make it clear that the item that we're talking about today is related to the award of the contract for the CEQA work. Those concerns that you have, which are very valid concerns, Jack, those will be part of our environmental document. Those are items you should be submitting to the public comment period so that we can identify those and be able to respond to those appropriately within the document. So today, really what we're talking about is a recommendation
You
to
have the
award.
document.
I agree with that comment.
Okay, my name's Robert Hain, and if at all possible, I would like just to make a few simple statements. Nick, I would like to address your story there about what's going on in Chico. I was born in Chico, California, April 9th, 1945, and my dad used to salmon fish in that Butte Creek because we had a lumber yard.
Robert,
let me just finish 1 second here.
no, this really isn't the
I
opportunity.
know you're going to tell me the same thing, but yep.
Yes,
Okay, I understand.
thank you, I appreciate that.
Yes, I fully, okay, how about this? All right, how about, I'd like to talk about the staff report that I'm holding then. Can I talk about that?
Absolutely.
Can I talk about, thank you. The very last page, it says, the very last sentence says, as stated earlier, the expenses were various studies and work related to the TAC committee. I was at every TAC meeting. We never got to vote on anything that Gary King was running. There was no notes. The very last page of it says staff report to engineering. The last paragraph. Okay, so and the very last sentence, it says, as stated earlier, these expenses were various studies and work related to the TAC committee. I would like to say right now categorically that the TAC, every meeting that I went to, we never had a chance to vote on anything, and there was no notes taking whatsoever. And when that topic come up of the pipeline, what transpired was Gary King stood up and said, well, if nobody can agree on the existing plan, we'll just run a pipe down the middle of the road. Then he addressed NOAA and California Department of Fish and Game and said, what do you think about that? They did not comment because as regulators, they're not supposed to comment on what you guys do. So from that, Gary King said, all right, then we're going to put a pipe in. So that's sort of how that transpired. It didn't go back to your board, and I thought it was very unprofessional. And as a ratepayer, I am astonished at the fact that to date, we're going to be spending $755,000, which I help pay into, but by the way, helps pay your wages. So with that, I would like to talk about the Hemphill presentations that we've had. And every one of those, and a reiteration of what Jack said, we have never asked for you guys to pull any dams out. Modification is what we've always asked for. That dam could very simply be retrofitted with a 6-inch lift of rebar.
I appreciate that,
okay,
Robert.
And so I know,
Robert, we need to stay focused on the item at hand. I understand that you mimic what Jack had
I'm going
said.
to talk about item at hand.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that one.
At that,
Robert, I didn't hear that.
Okay, I'm going to talk. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll talk about that right now. I'd like to talk to you about. I'm dealing with figures here of 18 cubic feet per second. I took that out to 180 days. That works out to 279,936,000 cubic feet of water. We would also like to talk to you in that 6.5 mile. Has anybody done a study on the amount of ground recharge that's going to be lost? So we're talking about a substantial amount of water.
Robert, that's again part of the CEQA process, right? Those are items that we want to hear from you when we're developing this document. But again, today is just the discussion of whether we should approve the contract to begin work on that document. With ECOR.
So if you have something.
So if we have something related specifically to that contract, I would be happy to listen. Otherwise, I hope that you would be engaged when the environmental document comes out and be part of that public review process and input so that we can make sure that our document can address all of the concerns and issues that you have.
Okay, here's all I have left to say, and I will clear the airway for somebody else. In this process, nobody has voted in the TAC committee, which is part of what it says in your paper, so I can talk about the TAC committee. Nobody in there voted for a pipeline to go down and eliminate that amount of water out of.
And nobody has voted for.
That's one thing I'd like to say that.
That's part of the document.
No, I understand.
That's part of the alternative. Yeah. So Do you have any other comments related specifically to the contract with ECOR?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Jack. You have another,
Yeah,
Thank you.
phone number.
we've got a, did you say the phone number?
Yeah,
Sure.
just
Okay.
the last four.
So phone number.
Hello, I think I,
Yeah, this is Sid?
this is Sid Brown. Yes, good morning, everybody. I just had one short comment. I presume you can hear me, so I'll just keep talking. And that is with the environmental evaluation, I hope that the potential for, what's the right word, growth from the additional water that would be delivered through a pipeline
Again,
will be part of the analysis.
Sid, I understand, and please bring that up when we actually have the document out. Again, as I explained to Robert and Jack, this is specific to the contract with ECOR. So we much appreciate your input when we start this public process to make sure our documents address all of those concerns.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other? Okay, I don't,
It
Scroll down.
was giving a hand up.
it would have shown, okay.
Oh, there's somebody.
Oh.
James,
James.
I've unmuted him. Oh.
No. James, can you hear us?
Talking. There again.
James?
Maybe to unmute on his end? I've
We
unmuted.
hear something.
Now I understand the difficulty of
There,
All right.
well, I think we hear you
Jim, you're
now.
up.
Yeah, okay. So I'm on the internet connection talking to you right now, but I've also got my phone live because I keep having trouble with the internet connection. So the phone number I called you from is 916-865-4721. Can you unmute that so I can use my phone instead of the internet?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna shift over to the phone right now. Okay, Jim Hoffler here. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Let me turn down the sound on my PC so I don't cause a lot of feedback. Okay, so just a couple of things. One point of information. And another thing, just to state our Friends of Auburn Ravines view of the situation, we're mainly concerned about fish
Jim,
and the flows and passage for the fish. I'm done.
Jim, we're in the same discussion I had with Robert and the
I got
others.
it. Yeah, but I understand, but there was something brought up by Mr. Wilcox that's an important point of information that was brought up by him, so I think I can comment on his comment if that's okay. Okay, for me to comment on Mr. Wilcox's comment?
No, as long
Okay.
as it's relating to the contract award, Jim, yes. If it's not relating to the award of the contract or to ECOR for the comments therein, then please just make sure that you submit your, like everybody else. I appreciate everybody's points, and they're completely valid, and there are things that we want to make sure are in the CEQA document. So everybody that's listening, if you have environmental concerns, we desperately want those brought into the mix as we prepare the environmental document. The document will be weaker by not providing that information. So please, when we do our notice of intent, please submit your comments to it so that we can ensure that the environmental document looks at all the impacts to the ravine. We want to make sure that we do this in the most environmentally sensitive way possible.
Thank you very much. Understood and agreed.
Is there any others? Okay.
Thank you very much.
No other items, we'll close item, no other questions.
Yeah.
We'll close item 2, and move on to item 3, which is the review of the project status report.
I've got my eyes reading it.
Okay, so Caltrans, Highway 174 pipeline relocation, that work's basically effectively done. There's like 1 or 2 real minor punch list items, so we're gonna be closing off that project, and that will no longer be on the project status as we move forward. Uh-oh.
Oh, you already used that one.
Thank you. Sorry, little pin malfunction. Long Ravine Campground, this is work that, maintenance crews are doing as well as, I believe it's Peter's Well Drilling doing some work out there. That should be done by the middle of May. That's included in a new, pressure pump. We installed some new tanks, and so that work should be finished up, within the next couple weeks. Lister and Country Club Avenue, that's replacement of some deteriorated water mains that we've had a lot of trouble with. Maintenance crews are currently working on that now. They've encountered quite a bit of rock, so it's pretty slow going, but that work's all being performed by our crews. And then Christian Way Life at the Highway 49, survey is complete, just getting into the design component of that. So it's roughly 1,500 feet of pipeline that we'll be replacing with that. PRV section, which is the next one down, Cedar Ridge PRV, it's 90% done. We're basically waiting for the easement so before we final those documents to see if there's any changes or adjustments that we would need to make. The next two are basically just in design and various components of that. So raw water, Doty North, tomorrow at the board meeting, Doty North, we will have our public hearing on the CEQA document. Once that is complete, we will be reaching out to California Fish and Wildlife. We'll have to get the LSA permit from them, so we'll start that discussion with them. We still anticipate that work to be done this fall. Design work will be completed and move forward once we get through the public hearing and the CEQA document to make sure there's no additional adjustments that we may need to make. Santini Siphon, again, this one, we're looking at a slight adjustment to the alignment, which could require some easement acquisitions. We still hope to be able to have this ready for construction this fall. And so if we can do that, that's both Doty North and Santini Siphon 1 are both moratoriums. They're both restrictions currently. So we're hoping to be able to have both of those under construction this fall/winter. And then the South Yuba Canal, we did have our kickoff meeting with GHD on April 29th. We haven't had any sites visit yet. The COVID-19 has really kind of messed things up for us in terms of being able to accommodate folks out there, sharing vehicles and that type of thing, as well as the tunnel inspections that will occur later this fall during the outage. We tried to get those earlier at this recent outage, but the COVID-19 and that just made things impossible. So we're moving forward with that, doing some desktop work. They're getting a bunch of information from maintenance and pictures, et cetera, so they can start to work on the evaluations of that. E. George Lake Wildwood. So we've got the package for the offer package for the one PRV, which is located at the church. Mine just Twin Cities Church. They seem to be okay and supportive of the location, so we've sent them the document, and we will follow up with that. Otherwise, this PRV would be important in that first phase, the first component that we had talked about previously. North Auburn Treatment Plant. We're going to be doing some upgrades for the high lift pumps, as well as a generator, backup generator that can run that treatment plant. So for future PSPS issues, as well as put some VFDs in there. So that RFQ is out, or RFP is out. We should be receiving those in the next couple weeks, so we can move forward with design. That has quite a bit to do with the electrical. So we decided to bring somebody in to help us with that. Combi Phase 1. So we're basically starting to build the ramps for the crossings at the pipes that we saw there at our walk. They'll be removing the bypass pipe and dragging that downstroke, and then we're moving forward on that as they wind down for this season. And then Centennial Water Supply, due to COVID-19, we haven't done any work. There's been nothing that's been done, both with the AB 52 consultations as well as any consultant work. So there's been nothing done since the last update that we did, and we will be bringing that to the next engineering committee. Will be the next update for that project. Alta Sierra Tank. So spend a minute on this one. As you're aware, the board in December awarded a contract for, we looked at 3 different options, 3, 4, and 5 million gallon options. We chose to go with the 5 million gallon options, which the board approved. While we were moving forward with this project, we were also starting to look at some other things within the system. And one of the things we identified just recently is that we're restricting the ability to use water out of our existing Osborne Hill tank site, which has roughly 4.25 million gallons worth of storage. That facility, with the improvement of the BEP work that we did for Rattlesnake, and if we make some adjustments to the effluent line coming out of Osborne Hill, will allow us to be able to push more water down into the Alta Sierra area, be able to help take issues related to peaking and some of those types of things. So we realized at that point that it's better spent to make some improvements to the outflow and the upsizing of the pipe up on Osborne Hill and reduce the amount of storage that we actually need to have at Alta Sierra. So we are moving forward with just building the 3 million gallon tank. In addition to that, one of the other things we've identified and we're trying to do as part of this, we reduced the tank capacity. We're also trying to raise the elevation of the tank. That's going to help us to do more work, to have better system flows further down into the Alta Sierra area. Right now, with the location of the reservoir where it sits now, we have some low pressure locations that by elevating this tank will help us do that. So we're working with the contractor to do this. We expect that from the original approval from the board of $6.74 million roughly, we're going to carve about $1 million off of that number and build a 3 million gallon tank, and then be able to utilize that money elsewhere where it's needed for better overall improvement, system improvement, which would be the Osborne Hill location. In addition to that, it also allows us to be able to use more storage at the Loma Rica treatment plant. Right now, due to the limitations of the clear wells, we have to reduce how much water can be released out of the tanks there at Osborne Hill because of the contact time. So by making some improvements to Osborne, we'll be able to make our system as a whole be much more efficient with its current storage capacity.
Question, Doug. So you're saying you can fix the Osborne, Loma Rica 3 million gallon tank, raise it, and still save $1 million? Is that what you're saying?
No, so by saving the $1 million at Alta Sierra, we can use that money to make capital improvements to Osborne Hill, to the tank site. There's some limitations as to the capacity of the line coming out of there, as well as a small upsize along Dog Bar Road. So that money would be better spent at doing that type of work to be able to make overall system improvements, which helps not only the Osborne Hill zone, but Alta Sierra zone as well.
So there's a little bit of infrastructure orphanage going on at the Osborne Hill tank. There's some capacity that we're not using efficiently. By doing this, we can actually use already capitalized dollars more efficiently.
Right.
So there's, in a weird way, Laura, there is a savings in that we have a tank that we don't routinely use the entirety of, and this allows us to use the entire capacity of the Osborne Hill tank.
And you've looked and you've done the studies to know that we still need an entire 3 MGD if we fix this other system.
Yeah.
MGD.
Yes, because that serves the lower half of the Alta Sierra zone, which comes off of this tank, as well as supplement flow to the BEP, which feeds down to Lake of the Pines, the cross connection to the Lake of the Pines treatment plant.
How big's the tank that's there now?
It's about the same. It's about 3 million gallons that's currently there now, but we only utilize about half of it. Whereas being able to put this 3 million and raise it up will allow us to use the full amount.
You're gonna build a pad or something? How are you gonna raise it up?
Yes, exactly. We're going to use material from on-site, from the berm that's there for the existing hypalon lined and covered reservoir, and utilize that to raise it to approximately 6 to 7 feet.
Demolish the existing tank?
Yeah, it's a hypalon lined, and so it's like a
pond with a rubber top.
Yeah, like a water bed, for lack of a better term. So that'll just get peeled out of there, and they'll do some earthwork. They're going to have to go down several feet, get that material all cleaned up and recompacted anyway. This will just allow us to then build it up higher. Okay. Any other questions? No. Okay. Iron Horse, Our north DFWLE, we've got a little bit more patch paving to do and then a final chip seal. That should get done in May. The outfit doing the chip seal has not yet opened for business, weather-wise as well as COVID. So hopefully by the end of May, we'll have that done and have that wrapped up. Still looks like we're under the number that we put out in the estimate that these folks based their cost estimate on. So we should come in under what they had agreed to pay by some amount. And Table Meadows, Phase 2, DFWLE. So we issued, obviously the board issued that contract or award of that contract. So we've had the pre-construction meeting. We're getting the contract signed, and then we'll start work probably the end of May or the first part of June. So they'll be in there and should be out of there by September. Let's see, the hydro stuff, I'm just going to identify a couple of them. On 5, which is the Chicago Park Fire Suppression System. So we're moving forward with design of that. We have had some changes to how many CO2 sensors and those types of things, so we're working through those, but that's getting done currently. We don't know what the timing is on construction because that's going to be a COVID-related issue, potentially in terms of being able to have folks in there. So we're just not quite sure what the construction schedule works, but we'll continue to do the design component of it and get that finished up. And then for down below at the hydro dam and water improvements, which is the Scotts Flat Spillway. So the upper crest structure stability reeval report has been submitted to DSOD. I haven't heard that they've responded yet officially. HDR is also preparing a plan for the physical hydraulic modeling of the spillway, which will potentially allow us to make some adjustments to that and be able to demonstrate to FERC and DSOD that the adjustments to that design are acceptable and will work. The idea being is that we can reduce costs. Right now, the estimated costs are a little over $23 million for those improvements. Hopefully with this modeling work, we'll be able to make some adjustments to the design of that spillway with ultimately being able to save the district money.
Doug, what item is that Scott's Flat?
Oh, sorry, it's under 10.3. It's the last one on page 2. It has mention on the...
You know, here's my question on this. There's a lot of hydro projects on here. And so do these projects added through the WHO committee? I mean, I haven't seen any of this background. It's a $20 million project to fix the spillway, but none of that information comes, it seems, the reports or any of that background information. Is it all reported in WHO?
No, all of this stuff, Laura, came to the engineering committee last year when we started building the capital improvement plan. We had a number of presentations where we went.
Years.
Yeah, I know they've been on the list, but they're always just, this list gets growing and growing and growing, and I just, it doesn't feel like that the hydro projects are getting attention in this committee, and maybe they do it in WHO, I don't know, but you know, I keep hearing, well, Scotts Flat needs to be repaired, but I haven't heard any, like a review of all of these projects and what's going on with engineering and hydro. Seems like that's kind of been morphing off into a different division. Department.
It hasn't. It's just been here. But truly, Scotts Flat's been the one that's been driving us for hydro. These other ones, I was going to point out that for the first time now, we actually have our to notice that Nathan Dravold, which is our now in-house project manager, we've now got him on board. So this has been a long time coming, but now we've got that part buttoned up, and so we should be able to do a better job, I think, Laura, in terms of bringing that information into this committee and starting to share that. And so what I'm detecting is a request from you to look at the hydroelectric capital improvement plan, and we can do that as, it's going to happen in June and July as we update our CIP, but we can make sure that it's more descriptive as we go through that process.
Nathan is in engineering department?
So Nathan is right now, he's the project manager over at Hydroelectric. So one of the things that's happening is that department has such a robust capital improvement plan, it needed its own project manager, because we don't have somebody over there that could drive the projects at that level and maintain it without hiring more engineering staff. So, we got Nathan to manage those projects and support the capital team over here in engineering, so that we can keep both the dam safety engineer and his assistant engineer in close contact with our capital plan. I think as we move through this process, though, we're gonna need to structurally talk about how we how we build our engineering team here at the district and where we put our engineers, whether we cut them apart and put them into their operational units, or we bring them all into one central area. That's something that the new chief engineer and I will have conversations about in the future.
Yeah, because it seems like you're duplicating support structure, surveying, drafting, plotting, all of that. You have to have two sets of everything if they're not co-located. It just seems like I'm seeing a big diversion of the two engineering departments.
Right.
If you call the other guy, essentially we're just project managers. The engineers and engineering are also, we're primarily project managers.
Right, and so I think that's some of the stuff we need to deal with in this year as we solidify our future chief engineer, is to say, do we want to have this centralized working body, or are we okay with a more diversified platform that has everybody around it? So far, I've been able to hold the majority of the engineering staff in the engineering team. The dam safety engineer and his assistant engineer are over at Hydroelectric because they have the most significant dam issues, and at the time, I had a more stable engineering environment inside that department. But I think that the future will lend itself to having the chief engineer take his or her appropriate role and to oversee all engineering of the district front to back. And I think that's appropriate. And I think that, I'm much more comfortable in a tiered approach. I don't necessarily like flat engineering teams, because that means that we don't have the experience depth that we need. And so, yeah. Doug and I have had conversations about this a lot. You can see him nodding his head. So I think as we get past the hurdle of the engaging our future chief engineers, then we'll be able to start moving in on how that department operates and performs, and its structure.
Good. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, long-winded response for it. We'll show you all the hydroelectric projects when we in June as we start building up towards our capital improvement plan.
Okay.
All right.
So the next one is also the hydro dam water improvement, which is the Combie Abutment Scour project. As you're probably aware, that one is looking at dam stabilization with regards to overtopping, scouring protection, stability of the dam, and then also looking at increasing the size of the penetration at the existing dam to see if we can get more flow out of it, to make improvements both to the powerhouse and to deliveries down to the Combie Phase 1. So we've done some survey and geotech work, and so that process has begun. They're going to be putting together some alternatives and costs related to that, so a consultant is currently working on that. Raw water master plan, in terms of the technical memos, the draft demand and unimpaired hydrology memos have been completed. The draft supply document is still being reviewed, so we haven't finalized the final draft yet for that one, but we expect to do that here shortly. COVID and some other things have kind of impacted our ability to get that stuff done in a timely fashion, but we're moving forward with it. So we're reviewing for the next one, which is Lake Wildwood, North Auburn water age evaluation. So Tanya's taking a look at that. She's the one that handles most of our modeling stuff. So she's currently looking at that, looking at the comments that we received from the consultants with regards to that. So Hemphill diversion, we just chatted about that, so I'm not sure we need to go through that one anymore. So said removal, I'd like to highlight a couple of them. So for Loma Rica, we're effectively done removing sediment out of Loma Rica. We still have a stockpile of material that we need to move, so we will be doing that this year within that project number to get that finalized. Greenhorn sediment, we've basically agreed to the conditions of the Fish and Wildlife permit. The Water Board has told us that we will be getting our 401 here shortly, so we hope by the end of May that we will, or the first part of June, we will have our permits that are necessary, so we can then start to consider going out to get bids to get some of that work done, to remove some of that sediment. There are some conditions. We can't even start to sample the material until August 1st, which means we can't do anything with regards to sending out requests for quotes for the contractors until we know what kind of material we have there. So we would anticipate this work would really be done in probably September, October. Once the reservoir starts to get pulled down, it gives us the ability to go in there and do some work. And then Combi sediment, Greg is in discussions to try to work with the Nevada County to try to take a bunch of that material that's still sitting there that was removed as part of that project. I think they're interested in using it for the landfill, and so he's working with them to see if we can figure out a way to get 30,000 yards, give or take, that the county's interested in taking to put at the landfill. So right now we just got a big pile of it out there, but Greg's trying to figure out a way to see if we can get it to the county. Let's see, anything else? And then the ditch tenders, we're basically done with that. Maintenance has been putting the final touches on it. So I don't anticipate much more of any work at this point out there for the ditch tender's house, so.
We're expecting it next week.
Yeah, right. So with that, any questions on other questions on the project status? No. Any public comment? Oh, Nick has a question.
That's me, a quick comment. I want to thank you, Doug, and staff for putting the division labels on the project.
Oh, yeah. I
That
forgot to mention that.
Director Peters had requested.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Thank you, Nick, for pointing that out. We wanted to put it somewhere else, so we're still working on that, but it's kind of a difficult program that this was originally generated in, so right now we just put it within the facility name, but we may try to figure out a way to move it so it's a little more visible, because right now it's kind of hidden in that facility name.
Label it is fine.
I agree. It's super, it's very, very helpful. Thank you very much.
Yep. Okay, any public comment?
Starting to number ending in 7068 again.
7068.
Is that muted?
Hi,
Hello?
this is Sid.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, awesome.
Just my short comment, and I believe I've made this in the past on the project status report, but Director Peters' comments reminded me that it seems that it might be useful and not too difficult to put links in the comment section when there's more information that's historic and perhaps useful in the evaluation and understanding of the project status reporting. So just a simple hot link to something that's already been created in the past would be a useful thing.
Okay, thank you, Sid.
Yep.
We got another,
John Norton?
and John, can you hear us? John, you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
I just a brief comment on the E. George to Lake Wildwood pipeline. 7,000 people in Lake Wildwood and Penn Valley rely on the Lake Wildwood treatment plant to provide clean, safe, and reliable water supply. I fully support the plan to build the E. George to Lake Wildwood backbone pipeline. However, NID should take action now to ensure that the plant will continue to operate. The Lake Wildwood treatment plant is at the end of its useful life now. Many of its pumps, valves, and filters were installed 50 years ago. NID needs to do a thorough evaluation of the treatment plant's reliability and schedule repair or replacement of all questionable components. This evaluation should occur as soon as possible. It is imperative for NID to make sure the Lake Wildwood treatment plant will function reliably for the next 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Okay, no, I see no other comments, then we'll go ahead and close the item, was this item 3? Oh, sorry, Laura?
Sorry, it reminded me that I've asked to bring back that project, and I had asked to have it come back to the engineering meeting for discussion before
No,
it goes
actually, you
forward.
asked, it was gonna be brought back to the full board, and it'll be back at the full board on May the 27th.
Okay, good, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank
We'll
you,
go ahead and
everybody.
close the meeting.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Good day.
Have a great day. Enjoy the rain.